Welcome back live to the ongoing digital transformation journey of and on next normal week. Now we are entering into another panel which is measuring success in Salesforce of the future, which sounds extremely futuristic and quite big expectations of that. So really pleased to welcome three gentlemen who are joining me this panel. So from left to the right, I would kind of like to welcome Patrick Markt-Niederreiter. Hi Patrick, how are you?
Hi, I'm very well. Thanks, Dario.
Thank you. Then we have Alessandro Mili. Ciao Alessandro, come stai?
Hi everyone, I am okay, thanks Dario. Good to see you again.
And back to English, Chris Wade. Chris, same question. How are you?
I'm very well, Dario. Great to see you all.
So let's deep dive into this conversation. The overall overview is to define those new commercial modules which are redefining the role of the sales and modern commercial organization. I think that's the continuous, ongoing, and very hot topic, right, during the whole pandemic. And the first question which I would like to ask you is, what are the key barriers that sales needs to overcome to adapt to become synonymous with customer expertise? Let's start with you, Patrick.
Thanks, Dario. So I think one thing is learn to deal better with ambiguity. And what do I mean with this? It's like the customer is someone you like to invite to your party. Yeah? So actually you would like to make a good impression. And the first thing you do is to listen, understand really what is the other one doing at the party? Why is the person here? What are desires? What are the needs? And I think we all have a lot of questions, right? And no one knows the answer fast. But I think it will be really key to be flexible and open-minded, to always see the customer as our valued guest and the needs in the center of everything what we do. And to then say, how can I use the feedback of the customer as a compass? So really try to put the customer feedback in the center, like with using Net Promoter Score, customer effort score, or really try to get the feedback on the different touch points, but stop guessing. So it's not about feeling or opinion, it's really about data coming from the customer telling you, is this or that making a difference? And this is where technology can make a difference. And this is also what means being able to deal with ambiguity. Sometimes the data is not the answer. It tells you can do either or. But if you are confident enough to trust your own skills and the data, you can find a good way forward to actually make a difference.
Thank you, Patrick. Sometimes, as you said, the answer is quite simple, right? But we are overcomplicating. Chris, let's see and hear your angle coming from Exevo, who is one of the cutting-edge technology providers for the pharma industry.
Thank you, Dario. So, I think, the question of customer expertise often has to start with, how we're organizing ourselves. And clearly we've seen lots of companies shift from a more mass market model, large sales teams, to increasingly, specializing on, particular decision makers, particular, payer audiences and the like. So key account managers, those sorts of teams. And, they're going to have a very different type of expertise to the one that we've traditionally seen, where it's been about, understanding the core messaging behind the brand, the references behind it and the like, and, understanding how the local market works in their territory, and being, a really deep expert in, how does prescribing decisions get made when I'm looking after quite a small area, a few hundred customers, maybe, a couple of hospitals. So that shift in focus, shift in decision making, is going to require, again, to Patrick's point, around that sort of, embracing the, I think a good term I saw on a TV show, I think embrace the mess. It's not, there's rarely clear answers. And that's one of the challenges that when you're looking at, information and data, is that if it doesn't neatly fill into that spreadsheet column, it's difficult to make sense of it. That is part of the, I suppose, the intrinsic power that we see, and we've heard about in other sessions about how, in areas like AI, that they can start to work across those sort of that mess, the fuzziness around, what doesn't exactly fit nice, neat, tidy sort of cell by cell model that we've been used to working in. But I think it does also it puts increased focus on the expertise not just of one person or one team, but how actually the organization can take its expertise and focus that on that customer through whichever part it works. So the whole idea of almost a sales force as just the team of people in sales, or sales is just the sales force, I think is one of the things that that is absolutely changing as we move forward. We see those lines between who's responsible for selling, and sales are only one of those teams that are in that process.
Thank you, Chris. Alessandro?
So first of all, I have to say that I am very well aligned with Patrick, and you mentioned most of the topics that I wanted to cover in the conversation today. But going back to the concept of flexibility that I like a lot, we can make an example. We can take the example of product promoted during the pandemic, for example. In that case, it was completely impossible to have a branded conversation with a doctor that was probably dealing with an emergency. That's a good example of what unbranded conversations means. You need to start from the understanding of the customer, what is the reality that they are living at the moment, and to use the conversation to create a good relationship with them, and to be able in this conversation to better understand their needs, to then move, of course, to the key selling messages of the brand. So everything is around flexibility, but most of all, we can say it's related to the real willingness to understand the customer, and to the ability to use the conversation to gain even more insight on the customer to better fulfill their needs. Given that, I think the biggest challenge and the biggest barriers are not related to the technology, are more related to the concept of empathy and the willingness to understand the others, the customers as person, first of all.
Thank you very much, Alessandro. In the meantime, I also encourage the audience, if you have any questions to our beloved panelists, just kindly drop the question into the chat section. Next question, what data, technology, or new skills do sales teams need to optimize to deliver a customer experience while maximizing productivity across an organization? Let's start with that answer with you, Chris.
Sure, Dario. As Xevo, our focus is on unification. It's on simplifying the commercial operating model. So that and particularly the technology that underpins that. So our starting point is the only way that you can deliver successfully manage a plan and deliver on a customer experience or customer journey model is you have to have all of your different customer functions working together. So it's not just cross-functional working for productivity. It's about at its the most fundamental level of how we work and how work moves from one part of the organization to another. So it's not just data going back and forth between sales and marketing. It is actually work being planned, work being delivered, and work being executed jointly. And so that's why we look at this as as one of the great challenges is breaking down the technology, data, skills silos, but starting with technology, of saying actually it absolutely exists today. The ability to have a common universe, a common data universe that it describes this is how customers exist in our business, and then we have our different business capabilities. What do marketing do as a job? What do sales do as a job? What do medical information and so on, and the necessary functionality support their role, but it is in the context of how we do this as an organization. So it's not just thinking about it through the lens of what does the sales force need to do. It starts with addressing some of those the biggest challenges we've been talking about for years, of breaking down those barriers. And if we have separate systems, one system for managing my sales force, another system for managing my marketing automation, and so on, we're always challenged with how do we actually get people to work together? How do we collaborate when we're never looking at the same thing? So that would be, that as Xiva, that's sort of, that's what we're about. And we hope that, the time is right, that, organizations are seeing these challenges in everything that they do. They hit this barrier of this is the limit of what we can do in this system. And if we want to do something else, we've got to work out how do we integrate them? How do we tie it all together and make it work as one? And then the integration becomes the challenge, not actually what you're trying to achieve.
Thank you, Chris. Alessandro?
Yes, I think that is very important for a sales rep to be relevant with the customer, to be not only an expert on the therapeutic area or on the product, but really needs to understand the environment of the customer completely, to be in the condition to be relevant and to be in the condition to support the customer. It can be in an hospital, for example, understanding the procedures related to the formulary or whatever. What are the needs of the physician to better support his patients? And in the pharmacy, it can be something that is related to the logistic as well. Those are just examples. But often we can expect that the conversation of value with the customer will not start from the brand. That, given that the rep need to be an expert on the unmet needs of the customer. And this is the biggest evolution that we can expect in the sales force of the future, in my point of view.
The evolution is ongoing. Patrick, how do you see that?
Yeah, so thanks. So I would say we should ask ourselves the question, so why do we use the technology? Yeah? So it's that the people can focus on the people, right? So our colleagues interacting with HCPs out there actually can really focus on the interaction. But the technology cannot do the full job. You also need to dare to test. Let me make an example. So I think it's really important that we in pharma start to do A/B testing. So you invite customers and give them a choice. Would you like to join an advisory board or be a speaker? Right? So there the customer facing roles can tell you what are the preferences which are known of the customer. Then you can use data analysis to see, okay, why did the person potentially join the advisory board? Has he published papers in these areas? Is he interested in the peers who joined the ad board? Or what is it that we know who could explain why the HCP made the decision, right? But what we then can do is we can wow the customer, because the sales rep, for example, or the medical science liaison could go back and say, dear Dr. X, actually, what we have observed is you have published many papers with this customer, and you also joined many events where your peer was participating. And then you can start to have a very different connection. And I think here it's really key that the sales force must not only take the insights, you should also help the sales force to give feedback so that actually the technology, the experiments, and the expert knowledge becomes one holistic approach. So it's not like eat and die. It's really, we need your feedback, start experiments, wow the customer, and then say what could be the potential next step. So I believe technology can do the job. You can focus on the people, but we still need the skills of the sales force so that they can give us insights and are more comfortable by using big data to complement what they don't know yet.
Thank you, Patrick. Today we had a couple of remarks in terms of let's burn the dashboards, right? But on the other hand, we certainly still need KPIs. So my next question would be, what new KPIs, not dashboards, are needed to define the success of the sales force for the future? Let's start this time with you, Alessandro.
Yeah, I think, first of all, the starting point, I believe that it seems to be confirmed that the sales force will remain the most important communication channel to change the behaviors of the customer. Given that, it's reasonable to think that the sales force performance KPIs in terms of sales performance will remain. And this is a good, solid starting point. The other concept is, I believe, that it's related to the fact that in our industry, we are quite used to have one side, the marketing-driven and brand performance-driven KPIs, and the other side, the sales performance-driven KPIs. We need to put the customer at the center, making sure that we have real customers' feedbacks, real customer KPIs from all the channels to then better support the sales rep in his job of dealing on the day-by-day with the customer, providing information on the best channel and on the best content or whatever is useful for the sales rep to better achieve his goals. The other point is that with KPIs, we need to start simple, especially with omnichannel. Start simple, but at some point start to avoid gut feelings, avoid not data-driven approaches. And starting simple means to start often with leading and lagging KPIs, use KPIs to see what we are doing on the channels, and then look at the result KPIs. The next step probably is to have some kind of real customer satisfaction KPIs at the center, and that can move to more sophisticated analysis, because you can have one side, the leading KPIs, you can see what are the impact of your actions in terms of customer satisfaction, and then you need to find a correlation between customer satisfaction and result. If we move this kind of concept, we can try to imagine something like the NPS predictive score, or even NPS forecasting. But this is more for the next step. In the short term, leading and lagging KPIs always work, in my point of view.
Thank you very much, Patrick.
Thanks, Alessandro. I couldn't agree more. So I think what we I think what would be very helpful is to understand the customer impact, right? So it's not only focus, but also on the customer and the needs, but also what is the impact we create through our actions. It could be through different channels, it could be indirect interactions, but it's always about this direct customer feedback. I fully agree it's also about short-term understanding and long-term understanding, so leading and lagging KPIs, and having something like a funnel so that it becomes easy for people to follow where have we actually lost the customer. For example, you send an email and you see how many people have opened the email, how many people have clicked on the link, how many have attended a specific event, how many have then given a high NPS score. How many of those who you tried to contact who were detractors actually were willing to provide you feedback, which also tells you something, And then also take into account, and this is where I agree with Alessandro, which kind of training did the people get? Because one thing is, executing and using advanced analytics and all the nice new tools, but I think we also need to make sure that the people are equipped with the skills they need in order not to only understand, but execute the right way. And really linking, let's say, the tools we are used to with new KPIs will become really key, which will also allow medical or functions which were previously not focusing on return of invest to have a different view on their performance. Because everyone can say, did I left an impression at the customer, yes or no, whether I'm medical, market access, or sales. It doesn't matter. We could use the same leading or lagging KPIs for all of them, and then cross-functional work also becomes a real team sport, because no one can say, I'm not allowed to use this KPI, or this is not possible for all the reasons. And this is why I'm a big fan of this funnel, this holistic view, and also this cross-functional, let's say, KPI setup, which really fosters this team effort and teamwork, which to make a difference at the customer.
Thank you, Patrick. And Chris, and maybe just another sub-question, is there any KPI which surprised you or shocked you during the whole pandemic compared to the previous normal?
Yeah. I mean, I think one I've seen used quite widely is time as an analogy for quality. So I think that's something which has been quite widely communicated. Was how long companies are able to spend with an HCP on a remote call, and the kind of inference was, more, lots is good, more is better, and it really started. So initially, it was like, wow, fantastic! These companies have clearly got a very strong drive to engage and to help and support. And the problem is that once it's what starts as being something which is quite straightforward, it's just a measure of time, kind of has become used as shorthand for quality. And of course, it isn't. And you've got exactly the same challenges that you had in a face-to-face setting. The doctors are no less busy. The way that they're working has been turned on its head as well. I'm sure anyone who's tried to go and see a GP in the last year probably has seen that firsthand. The health services across Europe, across the world, are busy. So is a half hour remote call actually a good use of anybody's time? Or is the problem going to be that you can do that once, maybe twice? But I challenge that as a forward-looking metric to say this becomes the new expectation, that if you're not doing a half-hour sales call, you're not a good rep. And that shouldn't be the case. And so I think to kind of look at the broader sense is if we are increasingly focused on the customer journey, on designing and delivering an effective customer experience, then we need to have measures that encapsulate that and can communicate where that customer is on a journey, or to Patrick's description as a funnel. I think it's a great way of looking at any kind of business development process. It's certainly in the B2B world, that's what we use all the time, but it hasn't really been very popular in sales KPIs in pharma. But understanding when I'm preparing for a call, where are we with this customer? Not just where I am based on what I did last time, but of course, in that intervening period of weeks or even months, what we hope is that we've had multiple touch points, with that individual, with their organization, with their peers and influencers, that we can distill down to something straightforward, which can be, readily consumed by a rep, by an MSL, whoever, to sort of get a measure of, what is it we should be thinking about. So the KPIs should be, hopefully less quantitative and more focused on the value of the experience and what we need to do to be taking that customer in the direction we want. Either they're already on that path, or we need to change direction, or maybe we need to reassess our approach. So I think it's, if we're rethinking, if we're seriously looking at our commercial models, at redesigning our organizations to be more, future ready, and to be able to respond to how the market operates and decisions are made, then the KPIs have to go on the same journey. We can't be using the KPIs we were using 20 years ago, just aren't fit for purpose in the world that we increasingly move towards.
Thank you, Chris. And last question for our great discussion, which is, in your opinion, what does success in the sales force of the future look like? I would say that's the easy one. So please take your crystal balls and let's predict the future. Maybe Patrick, you can start first.
Thanks, Dario. So for me, there are two success factors. So one is that our colleagues really react quickly and with confidence to faster changing customer needs and preferences. And what I mean with this is combine the expert knowledge with insights generated through new technology like artificial intelligence. So it's not about doing everything different, but learn how they can complement what they have did with new opportunities to be faster than before. We don't expect that they have all the answers every day, but I think what would be a fantastic outcome is that with confidence they say, we have a fantastic process and team so that we will come to the answer faster than the others, even though we don't have the biggest budget or the biggest sales team or something like this, but we have the skills in order to make it happen. And the second thing for me is focus on customer value. So it's not about talking to everybody. This is not actually customer focus. This is talking to everybody. Yeah. For example, if you have 100 key opinion leaders, do network analysis, use the knowledge of the medical affairs colleague to say who could be the influencers and combine it with advanced analytics. How many papers published? On how many congress did this person attend as a speaker, and so on and so forth. So if you say, if I talk to person A, it's very likely that persons B, C, D, E, F, G, H will also get the information, which means you can have a better resource allocation in the future. So you can do actually less with a higher impact. And I think this customer value and really allocating your resources best will become more and more important in the future, because people are overwhelmed and are not willing to spend their time so much with us.
Thank you, Patrick. Chris?
Really good question. I think probably it goes back to, what is the role of the sales force? Clearly there's a commercial aspect. They're there to deliver sales to drive profitability and revenue. But to HCPs, they see reps as educators. They see reps and the sales force as not being there to sell to them, because they're doctors. They don't see that as often. That's what they're trying to do. They just want to better understand that particular drug from that company, and they have a very clear understanding that that's why the reps are there. That they are there from whichever company it is to represent their products, to answer questions, to provide information. Now, if that's happening at the level of the prescriber or the level of a payer, it's still about supporting a discussion which is driving, optimal prescribing. Ultimately, it's got to be about, if it's about patient care as as what underpins everything that happens in this industry, then making sure that the right patient gets the right drug in the shortest possible time is a good outcome. So doing that, I think requires more than just looking at purely in terms of activity volumes or core pressure and things like that. You've got to be looking to how can they be effective, how can they be valuable, not just to the company, but to the audiences that they serve.
Thank you, Chris. And final words from Alessandro. We are 2 minutes.
Yes, related to the sales force, I think that I am convinced that if properly engaged, the sales force will understand the potential of the customer centricity and omnichannel. They are by design pragmatic, smart, and clever people. So the real challenge to me is to make sure that the full organization embraces a transformational path toward omnichannel and customer centricity. And this is all related to the willingness to understand new capabilities at organizational level, but even at personal level, to be able to learn from every single interaction with the customer. And that will lead to the success of an organization and to the sales force of the future, to me.
Thank you very much, Alessandro. With that thoughts, I would like to thank you for this very insightful discussion. We will publish that video on our official YouTube channel, so everyone who missed it can watch it anytime. And also to our audience, if you missed that particular session or any other, you can under the replay section see all sessions from today and of course also in the upcoming days as well. So Chris, Alessandro, Patrick, really great pleasure. Like I said it to anyone else. So join us in May in Dubrovnik live. And
looking forward.
and hope to see you there. So take care.
Thanks, Dario. Thanks everybody.
Thanks for having us. Bye-bye.
Ciao.